And we are up on YouTube right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Waring is actually on another Zoom meeting right now.
Okay, well, let's go ahead. We have a quorum, Madam Clerk, so I think we can go ahead and get the meeting started, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So we will call the Real Estate Committee meeting to order of July 13th, 2020. A quorum is present. I note that the first order of business will be to provide an invocation. So I want to ask everybody to, for a moment of silence, keeping in mind those members of our community locally, statewide and nationally, and across the globe who have suffered through this pandemic that is spreading throughout our community, our country, our world, those who have died, those who are suffering, and particularly our first responders who care for those folks and for those families who are greatly afflicted. So I'll ask for a moment of silence to just contemplate and meditate on the sufferings that they are inflicted upon them and those who are providing their care. God bless them all. Thank you all very much. All right, so we go to my packet. We have minutes to approve.
So moved.
June
Second.
22nd. There's a motion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. The first item of business is a request for approval of a parking agreement with Anson House. Lee, are you going to take this? Ms. Bailey?
I think I'm gonna take it, Councilman.
Oh, okay. That's why we have you on board. You
Peter
were
Rasco,
early too. Thank you for being prompt.
no problem. Peter Rasco, Parking Contract Manager with the Real Estate Division, Management Division. This is a proposal for a parking agreement with the Anson Borough Condominium Association. A little bit about why we're treating them as something different than an average customer. They, several years back, they have an internal covenant from their developer to provide 10 extra parking spaces for themselves, for the association. City doesn't have anything to do with that, but we did accommodate them in this parking lot at the Maritime Center over the years on a month-to-month basis. But for budget reasons, they would like to have some sort of assurance in the future that they'll always be able to still maintain 10 parking spaces with the city. So after discussions and meeting with them, this proposed parking agreement calls for them to go on to a year-to-year lease of the 10 parking spaces at the Maritime Center. And if we ever terminate, if the city ever terminates that, they would go, we would just move them to another lot or facility somewhere else, which we're confident we can do that. So that's why the wording is in there the way it is. And at that point, they would have one more year of a year-to-year, and then after that, they would revert back to a month-to-month in the new facility, be it a lot or a facility. So it's just all about them meeting their 10 parking space criteria that they have to have somewhere, and we're accommodating them. They came to us to talk about something greater than a month-to-month. So that's why we're treating them totally different than anybody else.
Okay. Does any member of the committee have questions for Peter?
No.
I just assumed that since we were doing all that construction work over at the International African American Museum, that their lives would be upset a little bit with parking spots. So we do have the spaces available to them. This is going to work out on a year-to-year basis. And like you said, If some reason it doesn't work out, we have to find them other spots somewhere else.
Which we're confident we can do that. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be right next door. It can be anywhere.
Gotcha. And any other discussion? All those, I'll need a motion first.
So
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. The next item deals with the Washington Light Infantry and a quick claim deed to them in the Sumter Guards. Mr. McQueenie, are you going to take this one?
Yes, sir, I can do that. And this is, I mean, it is what it says it is. So back in 1885, the WLI, or the predecessor, owned this portion of Marion Square. There was not a lot of people know this, but when the city owned Marion Square and subdivided it into lots at some point and sold some of the lots, leased some of the lots. And then in 1833, they conveyed basically what wasn't leased or what they hadn't previously conveyed to the predecessor to the WLI. And then if you fast forward to 1885, the WLI conveyed the 36-foot by 36-foot square for the Calhoun Monument to the Ladies Calhoun Monument Association. Because probably nobody wanted to do a title history or get into the weeds of the title at the time. Both the WLI and the city of Charleston a month later granted this area to the Ladies Calhoun Monument Association. I think this was just a matter of, wanting to ensure that to the extent there was any question the city owned it, we don't want to have to do a title search. We'll just quit claim it, which is pretty common in those types of situations, especially with governmental entities and such a small piece of property. But all the evidence I could find suggests that WLI owned it from 1833, that particular portion of Marion Square, through 1895 or 1885. The deed from the WLI to the Ladies Calhoun Monument Association contains a right of reverter. Basically, once that small square stops being used for the purposes of the Calhoun statue or monument, it reverts back to the WLI. The statue has been removed, and the right of reverter would kick in. Ladies Calhoun Monument Association is no longer a viable entity, and the WLI has asked that we quit claim, to the extent we have any right, title, or interest, that we quit claim the ownership of that property to the WLI, and that's what resulted in this deed. Again, I don't think we own it, but this is something the WLI, I think, wants just to clear its title. I put exceptions in there to ensure that it's continued to be used as part of the public square and parade grounds that's supposed to have been used as since the Ragg family dedicated in the 1700s. And then there's an MOU between the WLI and the city that it's subject to that, and that can be terminated, but it's still subject to it until it's terminated. I'm not sure, Susan might be able to speak better to this. I'm not sure what stage we are as far as deconstructing what's out there now. One of the things, if we issue a quit claim deed now, we would want the WLI to give us a license or an easement to continue the removal of whatever's out there after the deed is recorded. If all that is removed, or some of it needs to stay, whatever's worked out with the WLI, between now and the quit claim deed being executed, because this requires an ordinance, then it's not going to be an issue. We wouldn't have to mention anything in the deed. And I think that pretty much covers everything. If anybody has any questions about.
So I'll entertain now a motion to approve this.
I move for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further questions or discussions from Mr. McQueenie or from Susan, or Dina?
Just,
Yes,
do we
yeah.
need to know the answer about the process and when we're expecting to see the rest of the platform come down, or does it really matter?
I think that's sort of secondary to the issue here. My understanding in my conversations with the folks at WLI in some regards is that they want to clarify this issue and make sure that they have clear title to the best they can of the entire Marion Square tract. So this is not sitting out there like a sore thumb to some degree. Mr. Mayor, I saw your hand up. Then I'll come back to Mr. Appel.
So I'll also respond to Councilmember Jackson, and I could go on for a few minutes about that. It's likely that we'll talk about that, the further removal tomorrow at Ways and Means when we take up the matter then. So if it's okay with Councilmember Jackson and the committee, we'll just talk about that tomorrow. I just wanted to reiterate, and Chip stated this very clearly, that we didn't feel like we owned the property. We never got a title to the property, you know, and with the reverter clause in there anyway, at this point, this just, you know, totally clears it up for them one way or the other.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you.
Mr. Appel.
I think following the mayor's comments, we can pick up the question that I had tomorrow at Ways and Means.
Okay. Well, I've certainly done my share of quick claim deeds in my practice, and it's a valuable tool. It sort of puts to rest any issue about who owns what piece of property, if there's any question remaining it. So I'm glad that we're going to do this. This will sort of close that part of that chapter for us, I think. Anyhow, it's interesting what Mr. McQuinney said earlier, because if you walk around Marion Square, you will see, particularly there's a plot noting that, oh goodness, Jimmy Burns' house was located on
I didn't know that,
King
yeah.
Street side. So there were other residences located around this property, which I suspect probably goes back to your earlier comment as things were being parceled out over time. Anyhow, all those in favor of this quick claim, giving the mayor authorization, say by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And I think that's it. No annexations for district number 11, Mr. Appel. I'm disappointed. You ruined your record.
Yeah, I think people are starting to get sick of me.
You know, you had like a consecutive free throw record. You know, there's so many going on in the basket. And
I can't believe I made it this long, frankly.
well, you know, I think you have to start a new streak beginning in August. Okay, I'll put the onus on you then. All right. I don't see any other further business, so we'll be adjourned, and I'll see most of y'all in about 45 minutes on public.
See y'all shortly.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Mr. Wasco.